A warm welcome to the studio here at Brightside Gemmelot. Welcome to the second day of the European Industry and Energy Summit. We have a breakfast talk show for you today as a start. Here at Brightside Gemmelot, we will start with this talk show. A lot of interesting speakers. We have Pierre Jory, who is president of Aspire. We have Frank Kuipers, a guy originally from Limburg, having now an internationally very important role at the Saudi SABIC. We have Michael Karus, founder of the German Nova Institute. We have Arnold Stocking, the director of Brightside, right here. And in between, we will have a very interesting pitch. Reinier Grimbergen is our sidekick today. Please, as an audience, participate in the discussion. However, keep your questions brief and to the point. That will make Reinier's work a lot easier. So, let's get started because we have a lot of things to do. Let's get started with Pierre Jory, president of Aspire and member of the supervisor board of Domo Chemicals. Pierre Jory.
Welcome, Pierre. You came from Brussels this morning, I heard, and it looks near, but it's quite a distance to come.
It has been a distance and quite a drive, and thank you for having me here, by the way. I look forward for this interesting discussion.
We're pleased to have you here. Yes, the first question, I think it's a broad one. What is the role of innovation in transition of the European industry?
Well, I assume you refer to the transition towards climate neutrality, right? And this kind of thing, and circularity, which is also important. But first of all, you have to realize that this transition is really a tremendous challenge. Huh? Not only it will call for a massive investment, but it will really mean disruptive change for the industry. The industry has really to reinvent itself. We are talking about disruptive change in terms of business model, especially if we talk about circularity. Disruptive change in the way companies will cooperate together, in the skills that will be needed, and of course, disruptive change in the technologies. I mean, it's clear that business as usual is not an option. It's not about improving resource efficiency or energy efficiency. We really need to change completely. And the good news is that we can see a path towards there. On paper, at least, we have the solutions. We know the big levers that we have to act on. I guess we will maybe talk about this later. But the issue is that most of the technologies that we have to activate today are not proven at industrial scale, are not proven either technological-wise or even in terms of economical feasibility. So there is an enormous gap that we need to fill, and very quickly, very urgently. And this is where innovation enters into play. We need to have a massive innovation program to bring these technologies by the end of the decade at maturity level.
There is no proof, but the technologies are already there?
Well, technologies are there, but not at the sufficient maturity level. So we have clearly identified the big ones, the field of electrification, which is one of the topics of this conference. This is one key area. The use of alternative fuels, certainly hydrogen, everybody's talking about this, but also waste and biomass, capture of CO2 and usage. I mean, technologies do exist, but are not yet mature at industrial level. And certainly the upcycling, I mean, the circular economy. So we talk about chemical recycling for the chemical industry, but it's not only chemical industry, also the urban mining for the metals, etc. So they are there, but we need really to make a step in terms of maturity.
There are a lot of developments, but you also see in discussions, like also yesterday on this summit, that people think, okay, hydrogen will be big or will not be play a big role, or are you looking more integrated to it, and every innovation has to be judged or has to be researched on?
You mean in the field of hydrogen?
Or all those developments.
Oh yes, I mean, well, certain technologies are still in their infancy. When we talk about CO2 usage in the chemical industry with, combination of hydrogen and CO or CO2, well, we have technologies, but it's clear that we need to keep tremendous improvement in terms of catalysts, for example. Some technologies are much further advanced, and we maybe need to increase by 1 or 2 on the scale of TRL level. So it's about making a demonstration and maybe industrial scale plant afterwards. So it depends what you are talking about. But clearly in the field of hydrogen that you mentioned, there is a lot to do. Electrolysis of hydrogen do exist today, but we need really to step up in terms of capacity, for example.
But if a personal question, what technology you address as maybe the most promising or two?
Well, that's a challenging question. That's a challenging question because there are many technologies that need to be activated. And first and foremost, I'd like to say that you will not have one solution. I mean, in order to get there, you need a combination of solutions. Yeah. So I mentioned the big areas.
There's no silver bullet.
There is no silver bullet, but in each of these areas, electrification, alternative fuels, etc., you have different areas. If you take just electrification, you have the, for example, heat pump can play a role. Different type of furnaces can play a role. We need technology to adapt to the renewable energies and the intermittency. So when you in the big area of CCU, so CO2 capture and usage, I mean, this is where you have probably the most activities to be done in terms of innovation. There are also plenty of technologies that can be activated. So I would hate to just point out to one single.
But we are living in a very interesting period concerning that, I think.
Of course, and what I would like to say, because we talk about innovation, so I mentioned that this big gap that needs to be filled. Now, to get there, I think there is a need for a very strong public agenda, because we have evaluated within our association that, you need about 10 billion euro to develop all these technologies that we have identified up to TRL 7 or 8 level. So 10 billion euro in the next 10 years, that's a lot of money. And the issue is that the risk of these innovations is still quite high. You don't have any security that you will achieve the technological goal, and also the economical feasibility is not proven. So it's very important that there is public money available to de-risk this investment. And the second very important point is the coordination. We don't have any time to lose. We need to avoid redundancies at any cost. So we need really to pull everybody in the same direction. So what we do in our association already, we have all the different sectors in the same association, because whether you talk about steel industry, chemical industry, cement industry, most of these industries have the same issues. And so it's important that we avoid redundancies, that some people do not reinvent the wheel. So we have to coordinate among the sectors, but I'd like to say we have also to coordinate between European level, country level, regional level, so that we avoid that the public fund are spoiled.
Is that the role that Aspire is having and claiming at the moment?
This is certainly one of our role, what we are doing right now. And for those who don't know, so Aspire is really a cross-sectoral association that represent all the process industries in Europe, so at European level, but not only the industry, also the research and technology organization that are playing a role in this landscape. Also, we have some NGO, universities, etc. And as an association, we work with the European Commission to precisely establish an innovation agenda and allocate a part of the Horizon Europe budget that will be fully dedicated to these technologies that need to be upgraded in the next 10 years. So this is one of the core objective of our association. But it's not only technological. We also want to work with the European Commission to make recommendations for the policy framework that needs to go with it. Because even if you are successful in innovation, we have a number of obstacles. We know that these technologies will be more costly than the technology that do exist today. So we have an issue of a competitiveness. And so there needs to be a very good and well-defined policy framework to make sure that there is an uptake of this innovation, that there will be a market uptake as well, that we are protected against the, let's say, countries that would not have applied the same standards. So we want to play a role in these recommendations as well.
Well, we should have an interview later because it's too interesting for only 8 minutes of interview. Is the audience already awake, Reinier?
No, I'm afraid they are not awake yet. But if I have time for a question, I could bring up is that since we are here at the chemical hub cluster, how do you look at the role of clusters in this transformation?
Well, it's a very good question because it's a key point in our vision. I mentioned about technological areas like the CCU, etc. that needs to be developed, but we are convinced that the way these technologies will be used in an optimal manner is really by exploiting these clusters. We are convinced that these are the places where really the carbon neutrality will be achieved in the most efficient way and the full circularity, including because you talk probably about industry clusters, but we see more also in terms of industry and urban cluster. So association cluster together with the regional authorities so that, for example, urban waste can also be recycled in these clusters. But it's really key for us, and we have this vision of what we call the hub for circularity that we would like really to foster through this innovation agenda we have with the European Commission. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Pierre Jory. Frank Kuipers, a guy originally from Limburg, where we are right now, the province of Limburg, having an internationally important position at the Saudi SABIC, because he is internationally responsible for sustainability. Now, sometimes when you talk to him, you can hear the echo of part of the company's DSM past. Frank Kuipers.
So this is your home ground, Frank?
It is, yeah. But I also have an international career. So I've lived in US and in Saudi Arabia. So, but it is let's say the area where I've been born.
Yeah. So in Dutch we always say it's a thuiswedstrijd, but we will translate it later.
A home game.
Home game. Is it right? Do you recognize a little bit in the story of Pierre Jory's?
Of course. So I think that the points that Pierre made are points that we absolutely recognize. And so I think that if I discuss with people what our challenges are, then I concentrate on two topics only, which is circularity and climate change, because those are the words that we use associated with it. But they're also connected. And so if I talk about circularity, and we have discussed before chemical recycling, but that is only one part of, let's say, circularity. There we make the connection also to decarbonization, whatever that is in those terms.
I hope decarbonization of energy and not of chemicals.
Absolutely, because you use, let's say, a different feedstock, which also ultimately is partially used for the energy source that we use in our crackers internally. But I think that important in terms of this transformation is that, and that is, let's say, applicable for every transformation. We know where we want to be. That is in a full circular world with zero carbon emission of fossils. But the point is that the roadmap to that point is unknown. I think the first part of that roadmap we know pretty well, and that is the first 5 to 10 years. And that's exactly what Pierre mentioned. The period thereafter, which you require the technologies that still are at a TRL of 3 to 5, that have to go to a demo level and then have to be introduced. That's where the real innovation is. That's where the real risks are. That's where also the real investments need to take place. But I think important is still that, and we have to first survive the pandemic. And surviving the pandemic, we have to do the things we do currently. And that's why I think the utilization of chemical recycling, but also of renewable feedstock, and also of how can we do the incremental improvements in our processes are critical to be able to step into the innovation that requires us to arrive at carbon neutrality and circularity in 3 decades from now.
But as a company, you cannot choose all. So what are the topics for SABIC then?
So first, I think I have to stress that it's not only, we are working also cross-sectorial, and we are also working within the sector with peers. And so if you talk about on sector level collaboration, we work on a World Economic Forum initiative on low carbon emitting technologies. And there you see that all those companies have different topics that they are trying to focus on. And there you see that it narrows down to collaboration with 2-3 partners sometimes that have similar interest. Yeah. And so if you talk about, for instance, electrification of a cracker, and there you see that there are similar interests, but it's a limited number of players that might have that interest. But that could be an area of focus. But the focus for us is a little bit longer term, of course, because electrification will not happen over the next 5 years. And let's be very honest. Electrification only happens if you also have, let's say, the electricity supplied to the site. We are here on that site.
That's quite an issue in this area now.
If there's no supply of electricity, well, then we can talk whatever we like, but nothing will happen. The other point I'm trying to make in many discussions also in terms of the priority of where you will also add the renewable energy. Because I think renewable will be scarce for the next 20 years, maybe 30 years. And then you have to be very, let's say, notional on where you would like to use that renewable. Where does it have the biggest impact in terms of the investments we're making and the returns we get in terms of carbon dioxide emission reductions.
But we had an interview before and we also discussed that the situation makes the choice. If I look to, for example, German companies, they are talking about carbon productivity, carbon management. If you're looking to Rotterdam companies, they say, okay, the German companies would say, okay, we should reduce the CO2, and the Rotterdam companies say, okay, maybe we should put the CO2 under the ground, capture it.
CO2, yeah.
So the situation is also making the choice, and I'm very interested in SABIC is a Saudi company. How much does that influence the choices that SABIC is making, or is there also? We talked about it earlier. There's also some DNA of DSM in the company. So how do you mix that?
Well, I think it's by nature it's being mixed. I am part of SABIC nearly 20 years, which is longer than I used to work for DSM.
At the end, 20 years already.
It's 20 years. So,
I know it.
And I think that in that respect, if I look into SABIC as a company, it's very important to understand that we are committed to also carbon neutrality in 2050. Yeah. And we have a very different background and backbone in Saudi Arabia than we have in Europe or in the Americas or in APEC. So every region will have a different strategy, will have different options, and for sure, where the location where we are in Europe is very different from when you would have been in Rotterdam. So carbon capture and utilization or carbon capture and sequestration, those are also things that are way too expensive if you are inland where we are here. So you better look into solutions from both energy reduction and how you can further optimize your system, but also to really transfer to electrification and what those options are for the longer term.
Yeah. Time is too short. But, are there some people awake in the audience? Still not.
Sorry, Wim.
Shall we wake them by an alarm or something? No, we won't. Bob.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Frank.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Interesting. We'll continue with a pitch. Now, Heat Matrix's polymer heat exchanger has won the Energy Enlightenment's 2017 award. The jury found it impressive that Heat Matrix had solved the problem of recovering heat from flue gases below the acid dew point. According to them, the apparently simple and relatively inexpensive heat exchanger should therefore find its way to the industry. Frank Tielens.
Heat Matrix has developed a polymer heat exchanger. With this system, we recover heat. Flue gases, part of them come come from the stack and go through our heat exchanger back to the chimney. And cold air is being preheated and leaves the system as hot air. In this situation, because it's a pilot, it goes outside, but in the final situation it will be reused in the other part of the plant. Typically 10% of the primary energy is being lost via the stack, and we recover roughly 50% of that 10%. It is made from polymer. So up to now, recovering heat from these flue gases led to corrosion problems and fouling, which is not a problem in this system.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Now, absolutely interesting topic this morning about 2050. But we should not forget, I think, that we still have about 20 years to go, or 30 years to go, to get from today to 2050. And I think there are already a lot of innovations out there that already are proven, are applied in the industry, but are not applied yet on a widely scale. So I think, adding to the discussion of this morning, yes, we have to look at 2050, but in the meantime, we also have to save already. We have targets as an industry for the years that are between now and then. So as said, my name is Frank Thielens from Heat Matrix, and we are making polymer heat recovery systems. So if you look at the industry today loses up to 20% of their energy through the stack. And if you look at any industrial area, you see a lot of stacks with a lot of heat being lost. This is actually a golden opportunity because in a central place, you have a concentrated amount of heat in high volumes, which you can directly integrate back into your system. Why don't we do that? Because the energy is now lost to the environment. And the reason is because a lot of flue gas contains acidic elements or fouling elements. And if you would recover that heat, the acidic elements in the flue gas will condensate and it will basically corrode existing systems. So this was the clue basically for 10 years ago when we started our research to work on polymers. Because polymers, they are very corrosion resistant and have very good anti-fouling properties. And here at Camelot, people know a lot about these polymers. So we did this research, and basically the research was around how can you apply polymers in heat exchangers so that you're protected against these acidic elements. In the meantime, we have patented our technology, and we have developed a product, for example, like this. So now all of a sudden, because we can apply a polymer, we are able to recover additional heat from our flue gas. We can do that with a payback time, which is important for the industry, of around 3 to 5 years. And what we do is basically we take the heat from the flue gas and we put that back either into the combustion process of the industry, or we put the heat into a dryer, or we put it into water. If you look at us, we have applied this in the meantime in refineries, in the chemical industry, in the ceramics industry. You can apply it in food, but also in paper and pulp. In the last 10 years, we have started to sell this product mainly in Europe, but also we are present in China, Ukraine, and Pakistan. In Camelot, where we are today, we've applied it on an installation together with USG, where we can save in one go 5.5 megawatt, which is really considerable. We're talking with OCI about a project to get heat from their furnaces and put that heat into water. There we could potentially save 11 megawatt, which is also very considerable. So if you look at the potential for this product, it's really big in the Netherlands, for example. Royal Haskoning DAV did a study on this, and they really identified a huge potential of still energy that's being lost via the stacks. And Berenschot calculated that with technologies like these, you potentially could save 7% of the Dutch climate agreement, you could save the carbon emissions of this agreement. So, however, it's not very easy for the industry. It is actually very difficult because, as we saw this morning, you have many choices to make, not only in the short run, but also in the long run. People that work on new technologies, it's not always their daily business to know everything about these technologies. It's a matter also of time dedication. And it is a matter of money as well. And we as Heat Matrix, we help these companies because we mostly have process engineers to look at the different options that they have, and then we design and engineer the most suitable solution for them. Thank you very much. Questions?
No, is there a question from the audience? We go on because we don't have time, too much time for the questions. So thank you very much, Frank. And I have to say, 3 years ago, you won the Energy Enlightenment at this event. So that's why we ask you to come back and tell the story 3 years later. Thank you very much. Yep.
As founder of the German NOVA Institute, Michael Karus is considered as one of the leading experts and researchers on the CO2 and bio-based economy. Now, he's very outspoken about the industry. He says that the industry must go beyond the use of renewable energy. Only a complete phasing out of fossil carbon will help to prevent a further increase in the CO2 concentration. Michael Karus, digitally present with us. Michael.
Yeah, good morning. And you have summed up very well my message already. I have also some slides with me. I don't know whether I can share it now. Is it okay to share it?
Some questions, but if you want to share some slides, because I was very interested in the term decarbonization. I think we should be very careful with that. But you can show some slides.
Yeah, can you see the slide? Yeah, okay, wonderful. Yeah, you'll see here our future vision, and first it's very interesting to understand that 80% from the greenhouse gas emissions worldwide coming from additional fossil carbon from the ground. The other 20% coming from land use changes. So the key for climate, for protecting the climate, is to fade out the use of any additional fossil carbon. And this can happen in the energy world. You see the left-hand side of the picture. By renewable energy. Yeah, we all know that. We discussed this already here. Renewable energy in combination with hydrogen as a storage system or fuel or also an energy carrier. But we're not so often discussing about the material world. You can see here in blue on the right-hand side. And here we need also to fade out the use of fossil carbon. It's interesting to see also some forecasts from OPEC, for example, that if you go on like we do today, the chemical industry will be the main consumer of fossil carbon in the future, more than 50%, because in the energy sector we have the decarbonization. We don't need carbon in the future, perhaps in kerosene for aviation. But not for transport sector, for other transport sectors and also heating. But in the material world, in the chemical and plastic world, we need carbon because the organic chemistry is based on carbon. So in the organic chemistry, we should not talk about decarbonization. That is really misleading. We should more talk about the right source of carbon, which carbon sources we can use in the future. And in this picture, you see already 3 of these alternative carbon sources is CO2 utilization. So we can use the CO2 emissions from power plants or also from fermentation. We can also use CO2 from the air. It's called air capture. We can use biomass, all kind of biomass. And of course, we can also recycling. Recycling means to take the carbon is already in the technosphere in our products. We can also use this and close the cycle. So in our vision in 2050, we don't need any fossil carbon. And in the next picture, you see you have a closer look to it. So this is a free tripod on renewable carbon. We have developed this logo over the last years. Here you see again, bio-based is a leaf, CO2-based is in the middle, and recycling on the right-hand side. And so we can develop a carbon circular economy. And the interesting point is that more and more companies are behind this initiative. You see here some of the members, also some from Netherlands. Kosum Beet is one of the leading sugar beet producers in Europe, and BioBTX is a startup making aromatics from biomass. But you see the companies here are from many different sectors and different countries, and we have every month about 3-5 companies in addition. We just started in September with this initiative to bring this message on the table. It's also important to expand the Green Deal. The Green Deal is a very important step in Europe, but it has no focus so far on the chemical industry, on fading out fossil carbon, switching to renewable carbon. And so I think the job is also from the initiative to bring this back on the table in Brussels and Den Haag and Berlin and wherever to have a clear message in the strategy how to fade out carbon. And we have not only these companies here supporting it, also partners, partner associations, but what is also very important, we have a lot of well-known experts on our backing up the initiative. And for me, it's so exciting that if you count the countries supporting here, 170 supporters, number one country is the Netherlands. Yeah, a small country was very
I'm looking, Michael, I'm looking if I can recognize somebody. We will look at that later. I have a question for you. If we are talking about the terms like decarbonization, we should better talk about recarbonization in this case?
Yeah, recarbonization is of course a possibility to call it, but I think when I've made some tests with experts, most people don't understand the term recarbonization, what it means. Renewable carbon, when I go back to the first picture here, the term renewable energy is very good introduced. Everybody understanding renewable energy, and we think renewable carbon is a very nice way to, so what is decarbonization for the energy sector is renewable carbon for the material world. Yeah, we prefer renewable carbon, but of course, you can discuss hours and hours what is the best term. And we will spread our term in the public with a lot of activities in the future. The next step is to have a cartoon for the normal standard consumer that everybody can understand the concept. This cartoon will come in the next 2 weeks, and we will spread it around the world to make politicians and the consumer aware.
We will look at, yes, Frank Kuipers.
I would like to ask a question with renewable carbon, because I very much support the, let's say, the way that you've put that here on the slide. However, if you look at it from a instruments point of view and legislation's point of view, we have the Renewable Energy Directive in Europe, in Brussels, that really drives renewables into the energy sector, but it limits us to use renewables in the material sector. How do you look at such instrument, and how should, let's say, the legislator also transition together with us to drive it into the right direction?
Yeah, that's a very good question, and we think that the best instrument would be a fossil carbon tax. So not a CO2 tax, but a fossil carbon tax. It means that on crude oil, natural gas, and coal, a tax is applied, and this covering then it has impact on all applications of these fossil energy carriers. And we will also publish this concept of a fossil carbon tax in the near future, and we will also have meetings next year with the European Commission to discuss this. but exactly the discussion of the right instruments are a very important point. And the idea to have next to the Renewable Energy Directive, to have a Renewable Material Directive, it could be done, but this is not so easy to do because also competition laws and those things. The energy market is anyway a regulated market, but the material market is under heavy competition, and so it's not so easy to use the instruments from the energy sector also for the material sector.
Thank you very much, Michael, for your contribution.
Perhaps the last picture here, a very short look here. Here we show that we can, all the materials we love today, we can keep in our industry, but just we have to change the carbon source.
Thank you very much. Yeah, well, I saw that this picture coming around on LinkedIn already.
Yeah, it's a renewable material tree.
Thank you very much.
Nice picture. Thank you, Michael. Our next guest is the director of Brightside Gemmelot, where we are today. His name is Arnold Stocking. He has over 20 years of experience. He worked before at Philips for more than 2 decades, and this experience is very useful in his new role here, especially when it comes to electrification of the industry and electrochemistry in particular. Arnold Stocking.
Welcome, Arnold. This is really your home ground.
Exactly.
What do you think about the remarks of Michael Carruth?
When I'm looking at this, Brightside is here to scale up all these new technologies. And there are the 3 renewable carbon sources, recycling, biomass and CCU. Yeah. There's a timing issue. I think we need to bring the timelines in. That's how we look at it from Brightside point of view. We are here to work from TRL 921. We want to work with technologies which you can apply now. And then you look at the recycling is probably the closest. We have here mechanical recycling on site. There are a number of initiatives announced on chemical recycling. The real next thing to get on the table is the biomass, to get into a different feedstock, to get the renewable biomass in. And then, of course, there's CCU. Mm-hmm. And CCU is a little bit further on the horizon. Now, the interesting thing of Brightside is that we combine all these TRLs together, that we work on working with the companies, with the applied research institutes, with fundamental knowledge institutes on the whole chain. So we will work on CCU and we work on CCU, but that is not in a demonstrator yet. Yeah. We need to work on the demonstrators now, on the recycling part. We have the biomass in-house and we have this combination. So when I look at this, the whole challenge is on that picture, of course, renewable carbon or recarbonization, use it again, again and again. I think I like that phrase very much. Yes. So
we have also
the timeline is the issue.
There's difference between energy and chemicals, of course, and that's the problem of a lot of terms is that they make a cartoon of the real thing. And we have to make also the more we put more the complexity of translation on the table, maybe.
No, they have very interlinked, of course, energy and feedstock. And I think that's also what Frank said. Some of the feedstock is used as energy. And the notion that oil is a feedstock for plastics as well as for your petrol, I think that is all known, but it's with electricity the same. You can add electricity to molecules and you get better molecules. So electricity is a feedstock. Hydrogen is a feedstock. And I think that notion we need to bring further, also in legislation. And that's another remark probably to the previous discussion on the instruments you were talking about. You can tax fossil use of carbon, but what we forget is to stimulate the new applications of carbon. I think punishing only is not good enough. We will not get there. So in answer probably to Frank, what you said, we also need to stimulate the new, from a government point of view, from a policy point of view, etc.
We need it all.
Yeah, we need it, but without stimulation we will not get there, and others will take it.
There's a question from the audience.
Yes, there's a question. There's a question from Etteke Wiepkema, and it's interesting because she's a candidate for the Minister for the New Economy.
Yeah.
So we should take this seriously. So the question is, what do you need from the government?
What do you need from the government?
And I think we were discussing this.
Yeah, we were just discussing that. I think there are also wrong incentives. So there are incentives to use carbon for energy use. And probably that's good to use it for energy use, but at the same time, you limit the application for carbonization for feedstock use. So we need to get a level playing field, first of all. I think that is the one, a number of the topics. And we need to stimulate it, because if you want to work with renewable carbon and compete against the very efficient oil and gas industry, you're miles behind. You'll not get your business cases done. Yeah. So you need stimulation to pass that period that the CO2 is not at the level that you can compete with non-fossil feedstock. So I really wish to point at stimulation and help these companies and these startups, like this excellent startup where we had this pitch, again proving that polymers are a product of the future. This is redundant heat reusage with polymers. Polymers is a product of the future, so we need to stimulate the use of renewable polymers.
So it shouldn't be a war on plastics, but a war on plastic waste, or because it's also a term that is more political, etc.
Yeah, but the war, we will get into it. There's another notion. It's the timing and it's also the scaling. So when we get these first new technologies done, we will do it in tens of kilotons, hundreds of kilotons, and when we have in 2030 a few hundred kilotons renewable carbon being applied here at Gemmelot, I think we are very happy. And they are still at volumes which you can manage. And after that we will get into huge volumes. So when we start fighting now on the war on carbon, then we get a wrong competitive landscape. For now we need to get these technologies scaled up, and we need to do it together, and there's no competition there.
Pierre, I hear you agree.
Well, sure, and I'd like to rebound on this to answer the question. So certainly strong support to innovation is key to answer the question, but again, please coordinate at the European level between countries, member states and Europe.
That was my next question.
Because our strength,
European,
that's our strength, is to certainly put an incentive, and which has to be, there must be a price on CO2 related to market conditions. So are we talking about carbon tax or contract for difference? I don't want to go into the detail, but there needs to be a tool there. And we need also actions to stimulate the market uptake. Like, think about labeling of product, for example, so that the consumers know that this is a product with no CO2 emission, for example. These kind of steps will be very critical. So,
Frank, I also saw you sitting on the point of your chair.
Yeah, I fully agree with what Pierre said, but I would like to add to that. Look at it from an integral point of view, from a value chain point of view, because the recognition of only Scope 1 by the government currently doesn't help the industry. And so we should look at Scope 2. We should look certainly at Scope 3, because that's where ultimately end of plastic use and bring it back into the feedstock side of where we need to use it. That really reduces your Scope 3.
Yeah.
The notion. If I may interrupt, because there is a question from the audience which is related to this, and it is, what's Gemmelot's view, by Diederik Huisman, by the way, what's Gemmelot's view on the transition of the airline industry fuels? Because that is Scope 3 related in a way.
Maybe the bright side view we choose then.
Scope 3 for Shell.
Scope 3 for Shell. Well, I'm not an airline specialist. I like to follow up on the notion of the new value chains, and that's the big thing. And probably the airlines are coming in there. We need to work cross-industry now. We need to connect value chains which have not been connected before. We need to get the agricultural sector and the recycle sector and the high-tech sector, where I'm myself coming from, to the chemical industry. And that is just more than technology. That is also about culture, understanding each other, understanding each other's language, and building these value chains. And I think that's a huge challenge. So it's not only about technology. It's also about making this work and understanding how you do the logistics over this value chain. How can we deal with the recycle sector, who has been investing in these big plants where they basically burn the plastics instead of reuse it, and that's a fact. And you need to deal with it. We need to talk their language, and we need to combine it. And
cooperation is
cooperation across industry. So it's not only technology. We stand for technology upscaling, but because we do that over the whole value chain, we do that with the companies. We also see the other part, the economical part. How get these chains done? And I like the circular hub thought. It's an industrial cluster in an urban cluster. You need industry and urban get it together because we need to bridge these worlds. And I think that's the challenge we have, and it's a great challenge we have here at Gemmelot. And I hope with Brightside we can set a few very good examples to do this.
So yesterday we had somebody said, if I had a list for Santa Claus, then I would have put these points on it. But maybe we'll have a list for. We had him yesterday, Diederik Samson in Brussels. What is the most important point on that list that we can bring to him?
I think the legislation, first of all, I hope that really Europe stays ahead in the legislation, both on the stimulation as well as on the CO2 tax. It's for the level playing field, it's very important that we do it at European level. So I strongly support the Green Deal, strongly support the European campaigns. And I think from a national point of view, we need to be very careful. And that is one. And second is understand the timeline and the scaling up. We need the 30 years. By just saying, those who pollute, they should pay. Okay, fine, but you can't stop the pollution in the next 10 or 30 years. We need the 30 years. So stimulate the innovation, work together, industrial and urban together, work together over the timeline and bring these volumes up step by step. And bring that notion to politicians that we need the time.
So Pierre, what's on your list for Santa Diederik?
Well, first, everything that Arnold said resonate very well. So I don't want to repeat what he just said. Well, I will be more egoistic. I look at what our association tried to achieve. We hope that this budget for at the European level will finally be voted, and I hope that Poland and Hungary will come to more reasonable situation.
That's the first thing to do.
Yeah, because we need a budget to keep things rolling, so that we have now the budget for the European Commission, for Horizon Europe, that we could keep negotiating with the Commission to get the vast amount of money that we need. And
we shouldn't be a hostage of politics.
Right, and we are in a good way. We are asking for more than €1 billion over 7 years, so this is plenty of money, and we have good connection, and it works well with the European Commission. But we have these obstacles, these political obstacles, and I hope they will be removed very, very soon for Christmas.
Thank you. We have only 3 minutes for the last question from the audience.
Yeah, when there's a question again from our to-be Minister of the New Economy.
Very important.
That's very important. But I think it's a very good point she raises. Is the consumer ready? So the consumer perspective in all of this, because we are talking now about the industry and legislation, etc. But of course, we are all consumers and we can make our choices. So any comments on that?
Can I comment on that?
Yeah, of course. You can.
So yes and no, because I think that if I take the example of our initiative True Circle that we launched a year ago, we had worked with Unilever. They launched the Magnum Ice Cup produced from waste plastic. That was very enthusiastic, also being received by the public. At the same time, we know how difficult it is to explain to the public what circularity means, because I think that to explain and to communicate is not the way that we have been trained as an industry. And so we have to, again, maybe also to what Arnold said, be talking much more along the value chain to know how we bring the message in the right way so that it is understandable what we're trying to achieve, to make sure that they also understand what is necessary to really make the transformation that we're looking for. If I may add, let's say, also to the wish list of Santa, two things.
Yes.
Scope 3 recognition. And to the Minister, I would say, and that's why I like Samson's approach, let's try to achieve that level playing field in Europe. Let's try to prevent that we are going to create a, let's say, lock-in into the Netherlands, which doesn't help the Netherlands in terms of an industry, from an industry point of view.
We can talk till Saturday night about this, and we will do in other occasions, I think. And I thank you very much for joining this conversation. But we have to go on, and Bob.
Yeah, indeed. As you said, Wim, thank you very much to all the speakers here, Arnold, Frank, and also Reinier, and Pierre, and also Frank Tielens, and Michael Karus, digitally present. Thank you very much. Very interesting discussion. We'll be back in 10 minutes with the breakout session of Brightside. See you in 10 minutes.